Welcome, class. Today's mission is the evaluation of the case Saudi Arabia v. Nelson. The nature of the case is an appeal from the plaintiff in a personal injury action against a sovereign government. The plaintiff, Scott Nelson, was an American citizen. He saw a job posting for work as a hospital monitoring system engineer in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The job entailed monitoring facilities, equipment, utilities, and maintaining systems to ensure the safety of patients, hospital staff, and others. It is important to note that the company the hospital used to advertise the job posting was an American company called Hospital Corporation of America Limited. Nelson officially entered into an employment contract with the hospital in December of 1993. Shortly after arrival, Nelson noticed that there were numerous safety violations throughout the hospital that could be detrimental to the health of patients. He immediately informed his superiors.
The hospital has defective lines all over the place. This needs to be fixed immediately.
It is safe. Do not worry.
A few months later, Nelson was called into the security office. He was taken directly to a jail cell where he was shackled, tortured, beaten, and kept without food for 4 days, and then detained for another 35. After the 39th day, he was released and was allowed to leave the country. After arriving back in the U.S., he filed an action seeking damages for personal injury. He also claimed for recovery in Saudi Arabia's failure to warn of the hidden dangers involving his employment. The Saudi government appealed the judgment at the Court of Appeals. Failure to warn is the failure of an owner or occupier of land to inform persons present on the property of defects or active operations that may cause injury.
The argument made by the defendant is that according to the rule of law, foreign states are entitled to immunity from the jurisdiction of courts in the U.S. unless the action involves commercial activity. This case involves a state's organization of state power, which is not the type of activity engaged in by private parties. Therefore, the U.S. court lacks the jurisdiction and cannot interfere with Saudi sovereignty. Jurisdiction is the authority of a court to hear and declare judgment in respect to a particular matter. Sovereign immunity is the immunity of government from suit without its consent. The argument made by the plaintiff was that the defendant, Saudi Arabia, was not immune to prosecution under the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act of 1976. The plaintiff also claimed that job recruitment, contract of employment, and employment itself constituted the commercial activity.
According to the FSIA, there are 3 exceptions to sovereign immunity: claims based on commercial activity in the U.S. by the foreign state, claims based on a foreign act performed in the U.S. in connection with commercial activity outside of the U.S., and claims based on a foreign act performed outside the U.S. in connection with commercial activity outside, but with direct effects inside the U.S.
Judges ruled that Nelson's claim did not involve commercial activity, and a sovereign state owes no duty to warn of their propensity of tortuous conduct. Therefore, this matter is outside the jurisdiction of the U.S. federal courts.
I found this opportunity through a job posting and relocated for the sole purpose of employment. Is that not commercial?
No, there is a difference between an act based on commercial activity and an act associated with commercial activity. Your scenario involves the latter.
From a human rights standpoint, this case was a complete failure. Blatant human rights violations were ignored because of a judgment of extra duress. The decision also has implications for advertising companies, questioning their accountability and legitimacy. This is also an important precedent case in determining what can be considered commercial activity. Lastly, this case shows that even in the event of torture, there is a need to differentiate between the state and state actors. Since this unlawful act was committed by hospital security, who are private citizens, the jurisdiction remains within Saudi Arabia and away from the U.S.
Created using Powtoon.